Okay, so today we're gabbing with Kate Casey, the host of Reality Life with Kate Casey and the author of one of my favorite newsletters, What to Watch with Kate Casey. Kate has
Oh,
Kate has an incredible perspective on reality TV and unscripted storytelling in general, routinely interviews producers and other people from behind the scenes. And so I'm thrilled to have her here, pick her brain about this week's Vanderpump Rules premiere. Kate, thanks for being here. How are you?
good. Thank you for saying that. I love your Substack too.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, you send out these lists every Sunday or Monday just with like
Yeah.
a list of things that are coming out, and it's so helpful to me. It's great. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, because you're like a dork like me, and we like to just
We're so
deep
dorky,
dive
right?
stuff and just know what's going on. And I feel like you like appreciate a deep dive.
Yes, 100%. I think that we both think about these shows in similar ways
Yeah.
in terms of like their shows, you know what I mean, about
Hmm.
people's lives, but it's not just the lives. So, and I think that I kind of was picking up on a lot of those hints in this Vanderpump Rules premiere. I mean, there's kind of, you see the maneuvering happening, you kind of think about what the producers are thinking,
Hmm.
sort of, I think to me that my biggest takeaway from this premiere, let's just get into it, was that they thought Rachel was coming back. They thought they could get her back at
Yeah.
some point sometime soon.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I think that they held out hope in the beginning. I think it was more the network that probably held out more hope than the production company. I think the production company at that point had been like, we were bamboozled a little bit too much by her. And then when they set up, the shot where she was outside of like the strip mall and she got
Yep.
videoed
The
there, I think that they
paparazzi.
were like, this is somebody who just does their own thing and we don't work well with that. So she was became too much of a wild card. I think they were over her. I think the network was more so probably like, do what you have to do to get her back. And it all worked out in the end. I don't even think she's actually necessary for the show. Um, and I also think that the problem that they face, and I remember I interviewed Alex Baskin and I had asked him, is this going to keep you up at night? Like, how do you duplicate another season? And he said, absolutely. Like,
Mm,
this is what it's like when you got lightning in a bottle and you have to come back and you have to make another season. I think that the problem that they now face, and this is really, frankly, a problem that the Bravo faces,
right.
is the keeping up with the Kardashians of it all. Is that the timeline of social media and these shows? There's such a big disparity, like there's such a gap that it makes the flow of the show harder and it makes the audience more frustrated. So once Kardashians went over to Hulu, part of their contract was about setting it up that the show could air quicker after
Right. I
they
remember
film
that.
it.
Yep.
And because of it, you are still feeling like you're getting new information and you're not bored by it. But I feel like with this show in particular, I feel like so much has happened between that moment 3 months, after the scandal and now that we kind of feel like we're watching a rerun of a show.
Right. Yeah, we're back in June 2023 when the mayhem around this story was so large. But I don't know if there are enough sort of teases or promises of like, okay, we are going to peel back this curtain and there are going to be things that you have no idea happened that were happening at
Yeah.
the time. I think the Lala sending Rachel the voice note is one of those things I would say, but there aren't enough of those sort of
Hmm.
Easter eggs that I'm kind of expecting, or at least we feel like there aren't going to be any, right? Like I think with Erica
Hmm.
Jane on Beverly Hills, for example, like that worked really well to me. Like we knew this all these legal things were happening in her life, that she was getting divorced, but we had no idea sort of how she was handling all of the stuff behind the scenes. And that to me
Yeah.
worked really well. But like Salt Lake, for example, this past season, one of the reasons why it worked is because we had no idea about any of it. So
Hmm.
you're right. It's like each show and each season of each show represents this problem in a very different way.
Absolutely. I think the only way that they can salvage it
Hmm.
is if they're able to get them to talk about what's happening, the breaking the fourth wall. So, for example, I need to know more about whether or not any of these cast members are harboring resentment because Ariana is getting ample business opportunities. Maybe there are arguments about who sold more merch, who's
Hmm.
getting asked to be on more TV shows, whether they're resentful of the way that each of them have kind of positioned themselves because of the scandal. That is a great way to, if I were the producer, to kind of pivot from the scandal. But I don't know if the cast is willing to do that. So that's another layer to it. Is you really have to have a strong showrunner who makes that cast feel so entrusted in
Hmm.
them that they are willing to completely let go. And the job of the showrunner is to really say, you are at your best when you are your most authentic self because people want to see your humanity. And I think oftentimes with shows that run so long and are so popular, that cast members lose sense of that because they're trying to curate this persona that they think the audience enjoys most. And the truth is, they were cast for a reason because there's
Totally.
something about them that is really special and is fun and interesting and fascinating to watch on camera. And I think that fame, it's almost like a time machine or like an airport security machine where they get compromised by fame
Right.
and they're no longer the person
Before and
that we fell
after.
in love in the casting process and then in like the first couple episodes of the first seasons that they ever
Right.
were
And
on.
and I think that that evolution is really fascinating and interesting, but like you said, lean into that
Yeah.
evolution of your life. And like a tiny little moment of that was when Lala says that like one of the things Randall doesn't want from her as part of their custody stuff is that he doesn't want their daughter on the show. And she's like, I don't give a fuck about him, about Ocean being on the
Yeah.
show. Like those are the kind of things that you're right, they would be really wise to lean into because it acknowledges the fame, it acknowledges the show. It doesn't completely rip down the fourth wall, I would say, but it
Yeah.
again, I think one of the reasons why Vanderpump Rules was so popular in the beginning was because they didn't have any money. They lived in these, shitty apartments, and
Totally.
now they're all really famous and rich. Like tell us
Mm-hmm.
what that's like, and
Mm-hmm.
not just put up the
Or
artifice
like,
of yeah.
why don't you guys see any commonality anymore? Someone needs to go, like, listen, we don't work at the same restaurant.
Hmm.
I can't stand the person they're with. We don't live in the same area. I go to this bar, they're going to this place. Our lives are not intersecting anymore. You just lean into it. In the same way, like the Bachelor should do that with contestants. Like they should have
Yes.
a contestant go, I'm crazy about you. But God, to be honest with you, I live in Kentucky and you live in Denver and I
Right.
can't stand Denver and you're not going to work here. No one will like you here. So I think that sometimes shows the cast members and contestants get stuck in what they think the audience wants, and the truth is who you are and what your experience is all that we need.
Right. And I think with this show, one of the things that I'm really intrigued about is that there was this sort of mainstreamification of the Vanderpump Rules audience during the Scandal. Like it went, I think like you said on your
Mm-hmm.
podcast, it was like had become sort of a niche show on Bravo. And then now it's
Yeah.
like it's this huge thing, ratings wise, zeitgeist wise, drama wise. It's kind of reached this incredible high. But I think that with that comes a lot of new eyeballs on these people. And it's kind of an opportunity for them to they probably feel more pressure to do exactly what you just said because
Yeah.
they've doubled their audience. You know what I mean? And so to me, that kind of influx of people is also interesting because they're aware of that. They're hyper aware of
Mm-hmm.
that. You know what
You
I
know what's
mean?
you know what's an interesting thing going on now too, another layer, like beyond the wall. The ones that are getting these opportunities that are outside of the network, the way they're emboldened by it and the jealousy and bitterness of those that
Mm,
are not, because those that are being asked to do those things, again, bravo, surprisingly to people, because if you're in it, you're in it all the time, but it is pretty niche.
hmm.
And shows like Special Forces and Traders and all, they're giving these cast members access to a new audience, which propels them into new opportunities, fiduciary opportunities as well. And I think that a lot of times housewives in particular are kind of lazy. They don't
Right.
really pay attention to media. They don't know what podcasts are, popular or what media outlets, that magazines, like all these things that are popular. And I think they're only now getting what comes from being on other shows. Like they were complete, they're happy to be on their show and thought they were
Right.
like the center of the universe. And now they're like, wait, hold up. Tamra and Phaedra are getting asked to go on all these shows and get all this attention. And I think you're going to see a lot more of like this ruthless behavior. And I'm kind of all for it.
I completely agree. And it's like, you know what? You know what? It's like Ariana's getting all these opportunities, but it's like Sandoval was on Special Forces, like you just said. Like that is a broadcast
He
TV
made a
show
lot
that
of
had
money.
that. I know made a lot of money. Like he's going
Yeah.
around being like, she's capitalizing on it so much, like she needs to get over it. But it's like, dude, you were too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe not as well. I think that's part of it. It's like she did it well. She
Hmm.
leaned into it in a way that I don't I think that there's like skill in that too. So it's sort of like why are we blaming her for that, you know? And I think
But
that
do you think people are going to start to hate her now?
I do. I mean, I think that
I
I've
do
already
too.
seen it. If you click on the Pump Rules hashtag after this premiere, it's like people are very polarized in Ariana all of a sudden, and they either
Hmm.
are still in that camp of like she's our queen, like she can do no wrong, like they're celebrating her sort of scorched earth behavior, while there's a total other faction of people who do not like her. They think that she needs to get over it. They think that she, is capitalizing on it too much and needs to move forward. And it's really, kind of in either camp, it seems like, in terms of just
Hmm.
reading the audience, you know?
Yeah, I think people are going to get Ariana fatigue, but I think it's
Yeah,
just typical of any show. Once someone goes up really high, they're going to have to come down.
exactly.
And it's in it interesting because so many women and housewives, or, you know, if you're a cast member on Southern Charm, any of these shows, they people watch these shows, but as soon as they're on them, it's like they have amnesia and they forget it
Hmm.
all. And you're like, no, wait, remember, you might be really popular, but you're going to come down. And conversely, you might be a loser this season, but people are going to love you next season. It's like they forget. They think they start the show and then they become so discombobulated that they think they're writing their own script. And it's like, no, friend, you're
Right.
not.
Right. And I kind of think that I think Ariana has said that she's going to be the villain this season, or she's going to be made to be the villain this season from a lot of people. And I also don't think she really cares. That's kind of one of the things that I've always loved
Yeah.
Ariana on the show, because she has always had this sort of like, I don't give a fuck energy. She has like a very blunt delivery sometimes. And I really appreciate that about her. I always have. But I think now it's going to be read in a different way because of the pedestal that she's on, you know?
Also, if you look at archival video, and there was a great like behind the scenes episode that they aired one time, Bill Langworthy is talking, one of the producers, about how in the beginning Ariana didn't really want to film, and there was a dance like at a dance studio, there was something going on, and she was sort of hanging in the background. And I think that Ariana's always been kind of mysterious
Yes.
because people are trying to figure out, do you want to be on the show or not? Like, is this for you or is it not? And I think that the fact that she's getting all these opportunities that are outside of the show is going to will make the population of people who are already unnerved by her get even more unnerved. However, the people that kind of dig this reverence, like, I don't need to hang out at Tom Tom. I don't have to talk to Tom Schwartz.
Right,
I don't need
exactly.
to be your friend
I'm not
because
playing
I've
by those
got other
rules.
stuff going on. They'll lean into that too.
Yeah, and it's sort of like you imagine in an alternate universe if this had happened to somebody else on the cast who operates in a very different way, like a Sheena or a Lala, who I think they've always sort of played that fame game and sort of soaked up the attention in a different way than Ariana ever did.
Yeah.
Imagine if this had happened to them and the opportunities that like they would have leaned into, the criticism
Mhm.
would probably would have been even worse,
That's so true.
You know?
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I okay, so Lala and Ariana, are sitting at the table together, and
Yeah.
and Lala is talking about her own experience with Randall and how, you know, she has this horrible breakup, and he's awful to her, and she's got a child to boot, and she's got these custody issues. Clearly there seems some frustration on Lala's part because the audience has not embraced her perhaps in the
Mm,
same way they're embracing Ariana post scandal. Like, Ariana, you have been wronged. We support you. We want nothing but the best for you. And I think most people would see that there's a frustration on Lala's part. Like, why am I not being embraced? I suspect, just with my degree in armchair psychology, that
love.
there are a ton of people, namely women, who have not been able to get over how in the first season she sort of body shamed other women and
Mm,
belittled someone who wasn't hot enough to ride in a private jet. I think that the audience sometimes doesn't get over things. Sometimes they're quite fickle and they get over, but there are a lot of people that harbor resentment for certain things. And I wondered if you felt that same way too, because obviously you're a guy. And so maybe hearing someone say, well, if you've never been on a private jet, it's because you were too ugly. I'm paraphrasing, but she said
right, right,
something like
right.
that. You're going to hear that and then take that in a different way than another woman.
Yeah, I think. I think it's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about it in that way. I think there's this idea that like even people in real life, they're kind of you think about them in at the age or the way that you met them at, regardless of sort of what
Yes.
growth that happens in the years between then, they're always sort of that person, right? So like my childhood friends, like I think about the fact that we were 5 years old together, even though we're in our
Hmm.
30s now. Or so I think with reality TV, maybe Lala is just always the Lala from her first couple seasons to everybody, even though she has shown tremendous growth, I think, as a person and she has more restraint in her. She doesn't talk that way as often.
Hmm.
And it's a really good point. I'm sure that's true for some of the people. I think that Lala is always going to be the person who was bragging about flying on PJs, keeping Randall a mystery, whatever she did for the Range Rover. Like it was there were those
Yeah.
things that sort of are going to stick to her, that's probably not fair because I think again she has evolved, but
Hmm.
again, like you said, we're a stubborn audience sometimes.
Yeah,
And
we
that's a
can
good
be.
point. Yeah,
I wondered if there is another example of that as a man. Because I think these conversations, I think these shows, listen, I always say we're all cultural anthropologists. That's why I
right.
love these shows because
Hmm.
it's really a study of human behavior. And it opens conversations with people about friendships and relationships and race and all of these great things. I wonder conversely, as a man watching
Hmm.
Vanderpump Rules, because I think what's great about Vanderpump Rules is that it's truly a show for both sexes. It
Yes,
really
I
is.
agree. I
And
agree.
it makes you think about the time of your life where you
Totally.
had less responsibilities. You were so tight with your friend group. You spent all your time with them, maybe before you had your corporate job, even though they were like waiting tables, but their
Yeah,
schedules
yeah,
are
yeah.
kind of up and
Yeah.
down. Is there a viewpoint as a man that you think of something that maybe the female audience wouldn't necessarily
Mm,
read the same way?
mm. I don't know.
And maybe that's
I'll
having to do with male friendships
maybe
because you guys look at each other and for example, the way like Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz, their friendship and the way Tom Schwartz will always support him.
hmm
Do you think that a woman might look at that friendship and the way that Tom Schwartz supports him in a different way that guys would?
probably. I think they understand Tom sticking by him sort of and not questioning as much. I think it's the same, honestly, with Kyle and Carl in Summer House. Similarly, I think
Yes.
there's like,
Yes.
and I think that I think it's a very similar dynamic. And I'm sure men look at that and they're like, yeah, of course he's sticking by his best friend. Also, because there are less men in this universe. It's one, it's harder for them to
Yeah.
find good reality male stars, but also like Tom and Tom have been in this together since the beginning, and it's sort of like it makes sense to me why some of these men, the Southern Charm men, they stick together despite what the other
Because
have done
it's such a
because
unique
yes,
experience
they're
that you
in
lean on
like
each
like
other.
we always
Right.
say that housewives are in a club, right? But the
Mhm.
male reality stars on Bravo, that is a very small club, and a lot of them
Very
have been
good
around
point.
for a very long time. And so I think that that is also a part of it too. I think it's this sort
Yeah.
of unspoken pact. I don't think it's spoken. I think they just kind of like operate that way, probably. But
Yeah.
I think about that a lot because I'm like, Craig's done all this evolution on Southern Charm, but he's still kind of he'll question Austin, but he will still stick by Austin and Shep regardless. You know what I mean? And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I
But
think about that.
that's so true. And I think that's a great window into like the difference between sometimes the little nuances between
Totally.
male friendships and female friendships.
Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to ask what you sort of read, Lala sending this voice note to Rachel, kind of being the first person, quote unquote, to express empathy for Rachel in this episode. We're seeing her sort of turn away from the group in that way in terms of how she's
Mhm.
talking and viewing Rachel. What do you read into that as? Like, is it what you said earlier of her wanting people to kind of shed light on her situation and trying to get more empathy for her? Do you read it as her being a good reality star in terms
I
of,
think it's both.
okay,
I think she's fallen on the sword for production. She goes, I'll do you guys a
yes,
solid. And I think she's a
she's good at her
very,
job.
very savvy woman.
Yeah,
I think she is probably somebody who would be great on other shows too. She'd be great on The
yes.
Traitors.
She'd be a great
Fantastic.
housewife. Yeah.
I don't think so.
Oh, you
I don't think
don't?
she,
Why
no.
not?
Mm-mm.
Why not?
I think that she is a little too young. I think her daughter needs to be like 14 and above. I don't think women with very small children are great housewives because I say this as a mom of five kids. you're so in the thick of the, like in the weeds of it all,
Yeah,
that I don't know if you would be present enough to tell the story of your life in the best way. But also,
fair.
I think that the children are a great way of telling that story of that mother. And children who are over 14 will roast a mother. So like a housewife who like wants to go with this curated image, and I gave you the example of Michael and Brianna from Orange County as examples.
Totally.
Vicky's like, I'm a power woman. I've got this business. And they're like, you're the worst mother. Like you're so annoying. And so it kind of like dismantles the imagery that they want. So I
Absolutely.
don't think Lala would be great until her daughter is
Yet.
at least
So
14.
it's a yet. She has it
Yeah,
in
so
her
it's a
potentially.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
But I agree the traders would be great.
I would want her to be with somebody maybe in the entertainment industry, because she'll tell you the honest story of, yeah, I go to parties, no one cares about me because it's all about him. Or maybe it's all about me and I feel bad for the guy that I just married. And I'm also annoyed that he doesn't make enough money that I expect. All that story. With the
Yeah.
Crystal's
Oh,
great for that
be
story
so
too.
good. Yeah, absolutely.
But she would be great on the traders because she's very cutthroat, which is
Hmm.
funny because like she's from Utah. So you wouldn't expect it. Um, I think that so there's two parts. I think she fell on the sword for production because she goes, this is the show's not going to move. We're not going to evolve. We're not going to move on from this. And the audience is going to hate us if we don't have some sort of resolution to this Rachel issue. So yes, that's part of it. But I also think there is a frustration on her part. I've done all this work on myself. I have a child now. I'm in this very murky lawsuit. And yet, no one is paying attention to my plight. Where is the empathy for me? But again, I think that goes back to the way that she presented herself. And I think she pissed off, namely the women who, at that time, who watched that show, who had a newborn and
Mm,
they're rocking their
right.
newborn to sleep and their boobs are long because they're breastfeeding. And they're
Hmm.
like, who's this bitch going to tell me that I wasn't hot enough to have the kind of lifestyle that she is?
Right.
I think that just pissed people off.
Right.
Um,
Totally.
so I think it's both those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I'm not sure that I see what she's saying in terms of her and Rachel have both been sort of the other woman, but I think that the situations that was happening in they're not really analogous to me. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yes.
she's kind of drawing this fuzzy line that Ariana's pointing out, and it's like, well, you know, you were yelling at people for playing pickleball with Randall back in the day after you had broken up, and it's sort of like now you're contacting
Yeah.
Rachel like a month. It's sort of
You're right. So they're pointing out the discrepancies in her loyalty in friendships, where
yeah.
she's trying to say, I've also been scorned by a man. And those are
Hmm.
two very different pools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm thinking obviously we know that Rachel doesn't come back to the show. She doesn't take the paycheck, but I'm thinking about an alternate universe where she did come back and does Lala go full force in defending Rachel and being buddy buddy with her? Because now we know that
Mm-hmm.
Lala, Katie, Sheena, and Ariana are all now on good terms, which again takes some of the drama out of what we're going to see this
But you
season a
know
little
what?
bit. But do you
I
think
don't think
Lala would have gone full that direction?
I don't think people change that much. So I think you have one episode where she tries desperately to make a connection with Rachel. I've been there before. I know how it feels. And then Rachel says something stupid, which is going to
Right.
happen because she has three brain cells and has no strategy of life. And by the end of the episode, Lala goes, oh, for fuck's sake, forget it. You're an idiot. There's your episode.
Right. It's because they hadn't heard from her and she forgot how she was like. And because she said
Yes.
on Watch What Happens Live, she was like, the minute I listened to Bethany's podcast that she
There
did,
you go.
I
Exactly.
regretted reaching out. And it's like, oh, this is how she talks. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
This is how she
Also,
reasons.
Rachel's strategy is so bad. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yes.
She should have never done, and this is from somebody who did crisis PR for many years. She should have never done an interview unless it was after 6 months. No one's going to take you
Right.
seriously unless you've had a period of introspection. It was like she left the facility, went to her mom's house, took the dog for a couple walks, and then does this interview. It wasn't in enough time. And I just know that about people. Number two, she launches this podcast. And by the way, she needs like a producer to sit with her, which is like, why? Just talk
It's weird.
yourself. You
I
were in a
know.
reality show, just talk yourself.
And the producer doesn't even have a good mic on them. It's bizarre. Yeah.
Bizarre. She didn't launched the show on the day of the premiere of the Vanderpump Rules. Like, this is why Lala can't talk to her. She's like, you're so
She
dumb. I
doesn't get
can't
it.
handle it.
She doesn't get it. And meanwhile, Nick Vile has with both Toms on. He launches it on the day of the
Brilliant.
premiere.
Perfect.
And also Rachel already told most of her stuff on Bethany's show. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So she didn't save it for her own show even. So it wasn't even that much new information that we got from her at the beginning of this month. So I completely agree. I'm like, she's totally flubbing it. And I
Yeah.
also think that she keeps saying, she wants to be away from the spotlight and she doesn't want any of this. But
No way. Come on.
I don't think she can resist for that much longer. I don't
This
know if
is
it's
the
coming
same
back to the
girl who
show,
like,
but
oh, please. She
yeah.
wanted to be on that show so much.
Yeah. She
I mean,
says that I guess the cast goes on a trip to Tahoe, and she says that they wanted her re-entry into the show to be a surprise appearance on the cast trip. But then she just denied it because I guess they would have surprised her with like the whole dog thing too with James is really
I feel like they were
iffy.
both terrible dog parents.
Yeah, but she's trying to I mean it's a whole thing, but I don't really want to get into the details of that.
But wait, also the
Yeah,
Tahoe thing, like re-entry, like, hey guys. I mean,
right. Like how would that have worked? Like on in a
that just would have
vacation
been
home.
everybody would have been like, get out of here.
Right.
Also, like we just said at the very beginning of the episode, by that time the audience is over it.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
the audience doesn't really care about Rachel anymore.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I think a lot of people still care about hating Sandoval, but I don't think they care about Rachel because I think there is more
Mhm.
nuance in terms of like the amount of blame placed in different places and how she was treated, I guess. But like with him, I think it's just sort of people still do feel strongly about that. We see Lala trying to mix it up, with the whole Rachel stuff. Where else do you think that they can mix it up this season? Where do you expect to
Mhm.
see some of the diverging happening within the group?
I feel like it's gonna have to be a little housewivesy or Kardashian on Hulu-ish, where Tom he has to bite the bullet and say, Ariana, I'm really sorry about how this all ended. The truth is, like, we probably fell out of love before. And, whether or not we could salvage a friendship remains to be seen, but I'm sorry. Then he goes on, we get a matchmaker and somebody tries to set him up on dates
Mm,
and then he gets wronged and then he cries, oh my God, I'm never going to find the person I want. And then Sheena comes in and she's like, you know what? I knew you when you were 26. I know you have a good heart. Let me set you up with someone. And then she sets up, and then Ariana, I don't think she's going to be on the show anymore.
after the season, you don't?
No.
Why not?
Why would she?
But is this moment going to last for her? How does she sustain this into a different career if she's not on the show?
I don't think she wants to be on the show anymore. I think she'll probably,
She can be like a full-time influencer kind of person,
maybe. I just think she's like,
actress.
I do not want to go back in time. In her mind, I think she's already in college.
Hmm.
Does she want to go back and do sophomore year again? I don't
Right.
think.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the plight I think of. I think production's pretty savvy about like making things work. I think it's the network that probably calls them and says, what do you mean? This was our hit show. You got to get the band back together. And the producers are like, the band
Wants to break
sucks.
up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like we can make other things work. I just like, she's probably going to move to New York.
Right. I
She's
could
going to
see it.
sell that house somehow. And she's going to want to get out of Dodge. She's been living there forever. She's
Right.
like, why wouldn't you go to New York?
Where her boyfriend lives, who,
Or if
Lala,
she's smart,
right. What is it?
if we're her agents, and we could do it. You and I could be
Yep.
band for
Great team.
fantastic team. We go. You do a new show in New York.
There we go.
Ariana takes New York.
It's like when Whitney Port went to New York and we got
Yes.
the city.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we want to know what your experience is moving to New York City and how
Oh
that
my
all
God.
changes. And are you going to stay with this guy, or are you going to, now you're in the city, you're like, I can't stand you. And then you're going to pursue what, if she wants to be like a Broadway star, great. And then we meet all these Broadway people. I want to know who's on Broadway. Like, what are their personal experiences? Then you fall in love with them and then they have a spinoff.
Oh my God.
We can
Wow,
keep
your
this train
mind.
going.
Absolutely. And also, if she does that, she'd live in a nice apartment. So we can abandon any
Yes.
element of the like, we still have to be kind of
Gross.
poor. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
we're not grown-ups. Like we are, she'll have a grown-up life in New York. She also has
Yep.
she has a lot of like queer friends. So that could be a really
That's a whole
cool,
thing.
interesting group that she's part
Mhm.
of. We're on to something
Wait,
here.
are you going to be in the background just like swilling a martini?
I'd hope so.
right?
I'd hope to make a cameo or two, you
You
gotta.
know, you know what I also think I would be a great show, and I know you're
What?
friends with her. Kiki in Miami should be
Oh,
the host of the revamped House of Style from yesteryear on MTV.
wow. Yes.
She should bring that show and be the host and travel all over the world and interview designers. And I don't know, you have to throw some like TikTok influencer kind of angle there, but
Totally.
she should be the face of the revamped House of Style. You're welcome, America.
When are you starting your production company, Kate?
I know, right?
Honestly, I love
Well,
these
when you
ideas.
watch these shows forever, don't you sort of feel like you're
Oh
doing
my
that, the
God.
math in your
Oh
head
my God.
too?
Even when the Kardashians Hulu thing was all announced and they made it sound like it was going to be this sort of like empire of shows on Hulu. And I remember
Yeah.
this was like 4 years ago or something, but I tweeted like all these ideas for shows that they could do, and they were all like amazing. And I was just like, why aren't they doing these things? Why aren't they doing a show about Malika? Why aren't they doing shows about all the random best friends that nobody knows about? Why aren't they doing shows
Yeah.
about XYZ? So I think about it all the time, so
I think about wanting to run a streaming network at least 15 times a day.
same. It's
That would be
it's
my dream.
our brains are not broken, but they're very
What's the stream? What are we going to call it?
hmm. Uh,
Gabcat?
y- I love that.
Gabcat.
Gabcat, Gabcat coming to an Apple TV near you.
There you go.
There we go.
Gabcat. But I do,
I love
honestly,
this.
I do think Ariana, she
Yeah.
should leave that show, and Alex Baskin and his team should make the spinoff where she
Mm.
goes to New York. It's Ariana,
And it could
Ariana and the
be
Big
it could
Apple.
be a what do they call it? What do they call the spin-off that sort of happens within the episode? Like they kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. Oh,
sidestep
yeah.
into it. It could happen. She
Yes.
she could she could be packing up her house. It had just sold, and maybe she has one last awkward goodbye with Tom, and then she gets on a first class flight to JFK and goes to
You
her
know what she
gorgeous
does?
penthouse.
You know what she does? It's like that movie where they're with Dustin Hoffman and well, I forget it, in the back of the wedding church.
Yes.
She goes to his show with his cover band, and she goes to the back in like a New York outfit. She's going to be all
All
black,
black.
like just say goodbye to the pastels and the summer dresses.
It's
New
designer, it's
York look.
Prada. Yep.
She's in the back. She looks up at him, and he's singing the cover song. He's singing like Jesse's Girl or something with like his pleather outfit on.
No shirt
And
on.
he's singing the song, and there are all these like weirdos in the audience like screaming for him. But you get the eye lock between him in the on stage and her in the back. And she just puts up a peace sign like, I'm out. And then you see her moving into her apartment. Now, I also like the Broadway angle because
Yes.
think of all the interesting characters
Oh
that
my
you would
God.
meet in New York, and like how do they make a living, like the struggle, your friendship, like when you've been living in an apartment with somebody and then they get a big role and then you're still like in the background, like
Hmm.
all those little things would
Oh
be so
yeah.
cool,
Yeah, and I think that the
you
one
know?
with Roni, the Roni reboot, the whole thing was like they have to get these sort of like New York celebrities, and that would be
Yeah.
a shoe-in with this show for her. It's like you could have somebody, I don't know many Broadway stars names, but like you could have people who are a
Can
big
Hugh
deal there.
Jackman just like show up
Hugh
and go,
Jackman, because right,
hey
Hugh
girl?
Jackman, Sutton Foster, we could do something like that. So wow, this is great. We're
Well, we
pitching
just
this.
saved the network.
Um, the last thing that I think about in terms of like how they can make it so it's just not everybody versus one or two people on this season of Vanderpump Rules is there's something going on with Sheena and Brock. We saw the Sheena stuff
Mhm.
at BravoCon a little bit, which obviously is not going to be part of this show, but Sheena and Brock had that conversation on their couch, and Brock, I forget exactly what he said, but he said something that was sort of in defense of Sandoval a little bit, like they sort of understood what he was doing with the
Mhm.
blocking and stuff. But then Brock says that, or Sheena says that Brock is lifting buddies with Ariana's boyfriend.
Okay.
Is Brock going to be one of those people who wades into it again? Does he ultimately go to Team Sandoval a little bit? Because we know that Sheena was sort of really good friends with her with
Mhm.
him. I don't know. I'm just sort of trying to
Well,
figure out how are they mixing it up.
but
You don't think?
that's kind of interesting and important storytelling is that Brock is from Australia. He's got this weird situation with
Yeah.
children back there. Does he have a friend group and maybe he's leaning into these guys because he's actually quite lonely? What you need to do is you need to have an in the moment interview with him or have him in a conversation with Sheena. Maybe not even Sheena because maybe he can't, maybe he doesn't feel like he can be completely
Fully.
open.
Yeah.
But he talks about like the loneliness. Like, I'm here. I don't feel like I have friends. I love my wife. I love my daughter. I love hanging out with Lala. But the truth is, I need my male friends.
Hmm.
And as you pointed out earlier, I think men look at friendship in a different way than women do. And so, why don't you explore that? That to me would be the advice. I also don't think it's fair that we haven't fully explored Brock's real story.
I agree with that. I agree with that. It's this,
That,
it's an elephant in
yeah,
the room because it makes headlines outside of the show all the time, you
yeah.
know?
I think that I don't know if I'm
I
right.
know.
I would love to interview her and ask her, but I wonder if Sheena feels concerned at times because there's not enough of her story that's
Hmm.
told. And maybe it's because there's really not much there. But if there's not much there, how do you still kind of live within this space when like you're not really being covered that much?
But I'd
And
love to
this
know.
is how
I'd
you've
love to know
made
it.
an income.
I know, but I'd love to know what she thinks of all the stuff in Australia. Like really deep down, how does she feel about
But do
it?
we get the sense that she would feel comfortable enough to say that on
No,
TV?
no,
Because
I
she's a
don't. No,
daughter now. I think that changes it up too.
no, I agree. I think she's addressed it a little bit on her podcast, but like that's a very safe space for her. She can edit out whatever she doesn't want to show to ultimately make it out there.
Yeah.
So I understand her point of view on it in terms of not wanting to talk about it on the show. But like you said, she has this kind of pretty stable home life that doesn't give her much
Well,
new
also it could be
storyline.
she's trying to protect the children. I don't know if
Right.
she's met them. I think she has perhaps, but
Totally.
she's trying to protect them because these kids in Australia want someone to on a television
It
show
would
to be talking
exacerbate
about
the problem.
their
Yeah.
relationship with their father? I think she's in a hard position because she's on a show which requires you to open your life up, and there are certain boundaries that she can't cross.
Right.
And I also think she wants to protect her marriage,
Hmm.
and it's her second marriage, and she really wants this one to work. And he seems to be very loving to Sheena and their daughter.
Totally. I completely
And
agree.
and so I I think that people feel confusion because they know that there are these two children in another country, and they're trying to reconcile how this loving father could be a loving father to two children that he doesn't have a relationship with.
Hmm.
But you know what? Honestly, if you're going to do a story about 30-year-olds, this is the stuff you got to tell.
Right.
20-year-olds, it's a completely different thing. 30-year-olds, it's like, all right, this is going to get a little bit grittier.
Right. And I think that that's sort of what we hinted at with like the Ariana spinoff is like, I think within Vanderpump Rules, there's this Peter Pan syndrome, this like this conceit that they're all still kind of like kids, you know? Some of
Yeah.
them have their own kids, but they're not like fully allowed to like admit that they're fully grown up. You know what I mean? And I think I wish they would let them do that a little bit more. And we talk about more
Yeah.
adult issues, but it's supposed to be a show about cheating and partying and working at restaurants. So it's like they're kind of caught in the middle a little bit in terms of the identity of the
Well,
show.
maybe that's why, I think we'll see what happens with the spinoff, the Valley spinoff,
Right. What are
and
you
see if the
excited about
audience
that?
likes it. No,
Me
because
neither.
I don't really know any of them. And I have to tell you, when you have kids, you don't really want to watch a show where kids are
Right.
because that's your life.
I
I
believe
mean,
that.
I told you I have 5 children. I never talk about this.
You got enough of that at the house. Right. Exactly.
I know. It's like, by the way, no one cares about other people's children. They don't.
Right. Oh
The
my
only time
God.
they care in reality show is when the kids are roasting their parents.
Right. And they're old enough to bring the comedy to exactly.
Right. Like, do we really care about Melissa Gorga's kids? No, unless they're like, Dad, you're a meatball. You're annoying. Don't come to my wrestling matches. Then we're like, okay, they're cool. Like
Right.
Teresa's kids, we like now
Because they
because
have
they're
personalities.
older
Right.
and they
Exactly.
personality. And they're like, what are you doing? That outfit's stupid. But I don't think little kids work in, I don't know. I don't think they always
Yeah, I
work.
also think that like it's very clear to me that Stassi and Bo turned it down, and it would have. I think it would have been much more compelling to check back in with them. I'm not compelled to check back in with
Yeah.
Jackson Brittany. Really, I'm really not. So
Yeah.
TBD on the
Also,
Valley.
I notice this in just regular life. Like parents with little kids want so badly to present themselves as the greatest parents that ever lived. And when you have a teenager, because I have my oldest is a teenager, my youngest is preschool. I cannot talk to preschool parents because I'm like, you guys
You don't
know
get it.
shit.
Right, exactly.
And by the way, I don't either. I got a girl at home who's on TikTok looking at videos of guys that would probably give a girl an STD. Like, I got bigger fish to fry. Who fucking cares about their organic blueberry applesauce? Like,
Exactly.
you are headed for disaster, friends. Like, buckle up.
I love that. Yeah, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that on the Valley. So
Yeah.
last question, Kate. What's your interest level on this season of Vanderpump Rules? How are you? We watched the first episode, maybe in comparison to the end of last season. How are you? Are you genuinely interested in watching this season? What's
Mm,
your gut feeling?
I feel like it's like The Voice, where it's like the first episodes where it's like, they put the best out in the beginning and you're like, oh, that guy's going to go all the way to the end. I'm like at an 8 now, but
Okay.
I'm fearing that at least the next 6 ones, I'm going to go down to a 2.5.
Mm,
And then I might check back towards the reunion.
right. Right. I'm wondering if once it became very clear that Rachel wasn't coming back, I wonder if we'll see or sense a pivot from that moment, like around the trip. I wonder if that happens.
Maybe,
You know what I mean? Like if it's like, okay, we're definitely not getting her. We were relying on her for, this many storylines.
yeah,
How do we pivot? So I'm wondering if that happens. I agree the next couple episodes might feel a little bit deflated, but I'm
maybe,
curious if
yeah.
that happens. Yeah.
Do you think that the producers like get the bat phone out by episode 3, the filming, and their storyboards, and they're like, they call, network headquarters, and they're like, we let go of the dream. She's not coming back. And by the way, we don't want her back.
We let go of the dream. So we kind of got to bring Jax around a little more to stir things
Also,
up.
if they did bring her back, it'd be like one episode of like everyone's like, you suck, we hate you, throw an Exeter. And then she's like,
And then what?
I'm going to try out for the Miss Blah 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 pageant. And it's
All
like,
right.
you're not actually that interested. She was not
No,
interesting
she wasn't.
television.
No, she dated into the show and she was never that interesting until,
Never.
right, exactly. Well, Kate, this has been so great. I love getting your thoughts on all this stuff.
Can
You
I
make me
also
think
just
different.
say
Yeah,
those I think they were both terrible dog parents.
I
They
believe
should have
that.
let that release that doggy.
I believe that. Give it to Lisa Vanderpump. Truly. Like, come on.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I just had to say
No,
that.
it's okay. Kate, I really appreciate you doing this. You make me think differently about these shows, and
Oh,
I
good, good, good,
really
good, good.
appreciate that. And tell everybody when they can listen to your podcast, where they can follow you, your Substack, all the things.
Okay, so I have episodes 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. Reality Life with Kate Casey, wherever you listen to podcasts. My Substack is going to tell you what to watch in unscripted television, everything in reality TV, but also documentaries and series. And I firmly believe that people who like reality shows like documentaries and true crime. We're all the
Yep.
same people. So go to katecasey.substack.com. Bonus episodes on Patreon, a great Facebook group called Reality Life with Kate Casey. And I'm also regularly at the grocery store. You can check me out there.
Love, love it. Go to Ralph's. Well, Kate, thanks so much. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to gab.